Hello. I'm glad to be reading to you today from my new book, Grimoire. Thanks so much to Rebecca Orenson for inviting me to participate in the Bad Mouth series. I've really enjoyed the other readers, and I hope you'll enjoy this one as well. So, Grimoire, which came out last fall, published by Autumn House Press, is a collection of poetry that responds to and engages in a dialogue with the first known cookbook published by an African American woman. So, the book includes recipes and found poems that build on and try and excavate the voice of this author through the speaker, who is a 21st century cook cooking through her recipes. And the second part of Grimoire makes a pivot towards thinking about other kinds of making. So, not cooking, but child rearing and childbearing, and the inequities faced by women of color in the healthcare system with regards to birth outcomes. So, I'm going to read a couple of poems from each section, and I'll mark when the book pivots to what is the second subject. Wild yeast. What color is Shakespeare? To answer, I read my son Dunbar. First, we recite We Wear the Mask. Then, when Melindy sings. We pause at the line From the kitchen to the big woods. When cooking with Melinda, her faintly breath is citrus and clove. Her hands, rough as wind within, smooth as pears without, guide me as I knead and read her receipts aloud. Each line works its alchemy, solidifies her shade, elevates the timbre of her voice. She does not speak the broken tongue of Paul's folksy muse. Penwomanship alone affirms her education. Not until the poet delivers Dinah's arms, buried elbow deep in dough, do I forgive his lyric blasphemy. So that line not only speaks to Melinda Russell, who was the author of the cookbook, but also has some lines from Paul Laurence Dunbar's writing as well. I should also say that receipt is an archaic term for recipe, and it goes back to the roots of the grimoire, which is another word for describing a magical textbook. And grimoires used to include things like trying to, create chemical compounds to turn like stone into gold and things like that. So they go back pretty far, and they're often passed down within families like recipes. So another recipe poem. Marble cake, the white. My son, half cup white flour, 1/4 brown sugar, has trouble with fractions. When pregnant, I did not follow instructions, beat the yolks and sugar together until very light. It was months before I accepted I was carrying another human being. Add half-pound butter, whip 14 egg whites, flavor with lemon, half Jill brandy. The dark. The ophthalmologist suspects he's colorblind, half cup molasses, the yolks of 8 eggs. Perhaps that's why he prefers brown sugar in his oatmeal. He can't tell how it's different from white. Flavor with cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, or mace. I confess, I palm the iron pills, drink light roast brews without sugar or cream. Mixed children usually come out beautifully. The doctor is unsure about mine. Paper and butter the pan, first a layer of white, then of the dark, alternately finishing with the white. Fiddle, a duo. Aspirate a note, a sounding and a silo, entombed beneath wet sand where indigo, salt, sugar, tobacco, cotton, rice preserve a desperate hybrid crop. Mouth organ at midnight, one woman supine, another quadrilles, all blush crinoline and caramelized curls, in a swamp, what slithers and steams, moss. Antiseptic sun, bleach bone sheets twist in the first stirrings of a storm held offshore by a single vibrating cord as the laundress digs for clams in the shoal, starlit and moon dark. The string snaps, a rupture. So, this next poem begins the second section, which, as I said earlier, looks at the disparity in infant mortality rates and birth outcomes for women of color, which, from reading I've done, the numbers are actually worse now than under slavery, when women, Black women, were compelled to reproduce a labor force for profit. So, a pretty outstanding statistic, and one that I hope the work that people are doing to assuage and raise awareness about um, the disparity in terms of treatment for people of color, especially around the pandemic, will begin to change. Outcome. Her serve is 125 miles an hour, but she cannot outrun this. She has won, has published, but she cannot outright this. She has starred, has danced, but she cannot outtwirl this. She has flown, sung, and swam, released from parallel bars, stuck a vault without stutter, but always the eclipse awaits. Anomaly, when a thing happens that the accumulated data cannot validate. You tell yourself this is not life threatening. You tell yourself you can afford to raise or bluff. You tell yourself you can enunciate yourselves out. The talented 10th assembles a league of doulas. They edge the black of their capes with starlight. None of this helps. None of this will save you. Dixie moonlight. A flood like Noah's flood, like after Katrina, like the Mississippi's goddamn muddy blues, like Sylvia on death or Tony on slavery, like swag surfing over the breakwater, the levees levitating, water seeping up through cracked foundations, like molasses drowning cows in a pasture of sweet. This placental blood is an abrupt surprise. So I'm going to read one last poem that I often end with, and I call it my Beyonce poem. And I feel like everyone has to have a Beyonce poem. But it speaks to, I think, a more uplifting um, coda to a book that is really meant to be a survival guide, um, and to bring, in some ways, a bit of magic, right? Which I think we all need. Perfect Mat. The unnamed African woman who took a halting step off a ship onto swampland in a Louisiana port had a certain je ne sais quoi. Call it survivor's sparkle, a corona that attracted the highest bids in Congo Square and sent her straight to the big house. Beyonce, you and I wear the same shade of foundation, a tube of red minerals culled from Yoruba, Seminole, Irish, French, and Spanish earth, blended seamlessly into a creolized clan of American Negro. We share this common ancestress, but while she can be ridden in a golden flounce, I am too tired to twerk, to wield the flat iron, to swallow the lemonade, to cleanse the vessel, to host a goddess. Thank you for your attention and your time, and hopefully your love of poetry. I look forward to connecting with you in the future, either through my books or in other ways. Take care and stay safe.